I'm up way past my bedtime.
This high be the toughest shit to keep me up at night. Never short of a breath when I spit my rhymes. Clever forms I express every fucking time. Bring me back to the light when I ain't feeling right. This life, something special when I'm on my grind. Never short of the stress when I spit the mind. But of course, never rest until I fucking die. For the more lives, just rock the fucking.
Hello and welcome back to Thursday Thriller. We're coming in early today. I'm recording this breaking the fourth wall Wednesday night. It is 10:42 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right now. So for once, I will actually be looking at the Thursday game as well. So we'll get right into it. Thursday, of course, my slam dunk of the year. Pick that could not miss, Najee fucking Harris will be playing.
Do you want to see me dunk?
Sure.
Yeah? Okay. Are you guys ready?
Am I?
I'm okay. No, don't worry.
Does that always happen?
Still that might be like my favorite drop that I have. I might keep that one forever. But yeah, for the Thursday game, so I am absolutely beleaguered with Najee Harris, and I have my main home league. I am officially 2-6. This is a league I commission. We all talk a lot of shit. The person who comes in last literally gets excommunicated from the league for at least 1 year. So I'm not in last place, but I'm flirting with it. And it's mostly because my two main running backs that I drafted, unfortunately, were Nick Chubb and Najee Harris. And the Pittsburgh Steelers offense has been absolutely fucking unwatchable under Matt Canada. I am not excited to play any of the players in this matchup, but you're kind of forced to. Just given that, there's some good teams on bye week. So the Broncos, Lions, Jaguars, and 49ers are all on bye week. That's a lot of fantasy firepower just going to be out this week. And the injuries have piled up. They have gone absolutely insane this year. This is by far the most injury-riddled season that I can remember ever playing in fantasy football. I had looked it up on a prior show. I think the last time that we had a season this bad was in like 2020 or something like that, where there just was, a huge uptick for some reason and just injuries across the board. But this year, man, and so especially the quarterbacks, my gosh. It feels like this year in redraft and dynasty is basically survivor leagues at this point of which guys are left standing. There's going to be some ugly looking rosters this week for sure. So I think we'll definitely have to dive deep here. So because of that, Najee Harris is in fact a start. I would also start Jaylen Warren in a pinch again. If you're just desperate to fill the RB2 spot and you have no better options, Jaylen Warren could be worth a flyer. George Pickens is in the lineup, and so is Deontay Johnson for me. However, I'm still not playing the quarterback, whether it's Pickett or Trubisky. I don't like the matchup with the Titans, even though they generally give it up more through the air. It just feels like even with the enormity of quarterbacks that are out, that the Steelers, who have not been able to top 400 yards in something outlandish like 3 fucking years, their offense is just shot. It doesn't matter who the quarterback's going to be. So there's no upside whatsoever when it comes to the Steelers. You're looking for floor plays, and I think those exist within George Pickens and Deontay Johnson. Again, the state of running backs makes it that you might have to play Najee Harris and then Jaylen Warren as a flyer. But I'm really not trying to look at any of the other auxiliary Steelers. They really haven't broken out the way that people would want. The giant tight end there. I'm forgetting his name already. He's like 6'7" though. And also, geez Louise. This is why I usually don't do these shows so late. Calvin Austin, the wide receiver there, had a couple, spike weeks, it felt like early on, but hasn't, emerged into a consistent option, which how can you on this passing offense of the Steelers, which is just atrocious. And then the away team here, the Titans, had a revelation by putting Will Levis in at quarterback. Now, keep an eye on DeAndre Hopkins. Something popped up as questionable, something I think it was his toe. So if DeAndre can't play on a short week, that would just be yet another injury that would be absolutely detrimental for fantasy football, not just on the Will Levis side of things, but just in general for this team. However, again, given the state of running backs, Derrick Henry, you just plug and play and hope. I'm not playing Will Levis in this game. Now, I would, if I'm in a super flex league or if I'm just really hurting at quarter. Honestly, if you're picking up Will Levis to play him at quarterback, you would have to be like really hurting. I almost can't imagine the situation that you would have for that to have to be a thing. But yeah, I mean, there's not really much here. If Nuke plays after the 3 touchdown game and what we saw with Levis and what we've seen from Steelers cornerbacks, you play him. There's not really any other wide receivers that I'm going to try and rely on for the Titans. I don't think Treylon Burks is quite back yet. And Nick Westbrook-Akine in like the deepest of deep leagues. I have a 16-team dynasty league where I literally still might not start him. It kind of depends on Nuke's availability. So getting away from the Titans, really with the Titans, it's Derrick Henry and nobody else. That's my final answer, to be honest. Getting away from the Thursday game, we can slide into Sunday, and we have a morning game. So the 9:30 a.m. game, Dolphins Chiefs. Now this could be a little something. I mean, you're playing everyone. You're basically just whoever's available, you're throwing them out there. So Mahomes, Kelsey, Pacheco, Rashee Rice, I like even. He's kind of taking over that Juju Smith-Schuster role. The other wide receivers, you can't rely on them. They're just pot shots. Same thing with Jerick McKinnon. Again, if you're just in the deepest of deep leagues and you just literally need a body to fill that spot, I get it, but it's not a great play. And then on the Dolphins side, it's the usual suspects. It's Tua, it's Tyreek, it's Jalen Waddle. The Tyreek revenge factor game. Now, Chiefs defense is tough, and they're even tougher at home, but Tyreek returning, could be a really big Tyreek week. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. But again, and then for the running backs, it's, if Mostert's available, you play him, and none of the other guys have emerged besides A-Shane. So we're all desperately waiting for A-Shane to get off IR. Vikings-Falcons, this one is sad because of, unfortunately, the Kirk Cousins injury. He is now officially out for the year, the dreaded ACL tear, which sucks because he had been fighting his way back with this team. They are 4-4. After, a really tough start, losing Justin Jefferson. So potentially this affects Justin Jefferson coming off IR. Now, hopefully what ends up happening is Josh Dobbs is able to keep them afloat and fighting for that 7th playoff spot. Because as long as that happens, the Vikings are the type of team that, when Justin Jefferson is available, the reason they traded for Dobbs is because they want to compete for that playoff spot. Whereas the Cardinals, it feels like it's very much the reverse of, if you're trading Dobbs not to go to Kyler Murray and to go to Clayton Tune, you're basically in full-on tank mode at this point. So getting back to the Vikings, Jordan Addison is a fantastic play. Even though the Falcons defense has been tough, Jordan Addison has been filling in the void for Justin Jefferson and is a viable wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 upside. So he's in your lineup. TJ Hawkinson's in your lineup. Now the running backs, this is where it gets kind of sticky. I am a little bit more of a Cam Akers guy. It feels like he's slowly working into and eating away at Alexander Madison's workload. And I do feel like that switch could be made eventually. I think they will potentially lean on both of them now a little bit more now that it's not Kirk Cousins and it's Josh Dobbs. They're not necessarily going to be willing to throw the ball 50, 60 times a game. So I think we could actually see both of them be viable RB2s going forward. Just again, given the state of running backs. So for this week specifically, not the greatest matchup, but again, if you're really hard up for a running back, and I know I am in a few leagues, I would be looking out for Madison or Akers. And then even KJ Osborne, just keep an eye. I wouldn't necessarily go back to it. When it was Kirk Cousins last game, he had a bunch of targets and had a nice PPR game, but I don't know how viable that's going to be with Josh Dobbs. With Dobbs in, it really feels like it's going to go through Addison, Hawkinson, and no one else. But the running backs, again, just given the state of the running backs, like you're just looking for warm bodies that are going to be involved in getting actual touches and potentially goal line work. On the Falcons side, I mean, again, I could do the slam dunk meme again, but honestly, like Arthur Smith is just, ruining our fantasy rosters.
Look how they massacred my boy.
It's been beleaguered. Everyone is upset about it. The high draft capital on Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, and Drake London, just to absolutely squander your team for the most part with Desmond Ridder, and to basically lament, the online ecosphere, and kind of saying that it's just, repetitive banter from reporters that Desmond Ridder should not be the starting quarterback and they should turn to Taylor Heineke. And then a week later, he does do it. So, I guess it wasn't just the haters. But on the Falcons side of the ball, for me, I'm still not playing Kyle Pitts. He's splitting work with Jonnu Smith just because they're switching to Taylor Heineke. To me, Taylor Heineke is an upgrade to Desmond Ridder, but it is not like some massive upgrade. It is a slight to moderate upgrade. He will take some deep shots. He will make probably a couple more than Desmond Ridder. He will also miss some. And people will lament and remember why he is a backup quarterback in the first place. Do I think he can have a decent game? Yeah, sure. I would be willing to start Taylor Heineke again over the type of options of a Will Levis, of a Clayton Tune, potentially the backup for the Rams. They signed some guy nobody's ever heard of, Dresson Wynn. I don't even know this guy's name. He's an absolute nobody. So like just getting away from that, like even the Bears with Tyson Bagent. Just all these, the Giants, if Tyrod's not available and Danny Dimes can't play, it's like that they've got Danny DeVito. What? No, Tommy DeVito, whatever this guy's name is. So it's just like, yeah, it's rough out in these quarterback streets this week. Aiden O'Connell for the Raiders. Like I'm playing Heineke over all those guys. Even Josh Dobbs on the other side of the ball, even though I like Dobbs, he literally just got there. And, I know that he literally just got there for the Cardinals too, and he was playing well. But it did take him a couple weeks, it felt like, to get actually acclimated and, fantasy viable in the sense of putting up like 20 to 25 points as opposed to 15. So I would wait a game or two before I'm willing to throw Dobbs in there. I don't mind picking him up, throwing him on the bench, especially in Superflex if he's out there in a shallower league. Because he was owned in a lot of leagues because he was starting for the Cardinals. Or go throw a low end trade offer at and leave him on your bench and see if he can develop. And if Justin Jefferson does end up coming back, Dobbs could end up being a viable fantasy quarterback down the stretch. But getting back to Taylor Heineke, yeah, I'd be willing to start him even over his counterparts. So I'm starting Taylor Heineke, Drake London. You're forced to start Kyle Pitts because, it's tight ends. And Drake, for the running backs, I mean, who fucking knows anymore? But this, to me, I'm just going to go with my gut. It feels like a Bijan Robinson game. So I would start Bijan. I would start Algier also if I'm really hurting again. But, I'd have to be in a situation. So, a perfect example is I dropped Najee Harris, and now I don't have a second running back. My opponent dropped Algier. I might put in a bid and pick up Algier and see if I can play him as my running back too, over Najee Harris. Not because I really think that's a better play, but just purely out of spite. Seahawks, Ravens. This is like an actual good fantasy matchup. The Ravens are at home. Really love Lamar Mandrew's stack here. They kind of disappointed us last week with the Arizona Cardinals, which I predicted. Those are the type of games that are often very wonky. The Ravens going on the road to the Cardinals, maybe not necessarily getting up for that game in the same sense. They kind of just gave it to Gus Bus, let him toot drive it home. So for this game, I like Lamar, I like Mandrews, I like Zay Flowers. Not trying to mess around with Odell Beckham or Rashad Bateman unless I really have to. And I like Gus Bus. It feels like Gus Bus has kind of taken over the backfield for now, and so I don't mind him as an RB2 play. And then for the Seahawks, for the running backs to start with, actually, just make sure that Zach Charbonnet is on your bench if he is out on waivers. Simply for the fact of the Seahawks running back, regardless of who it happens to be, whoever that starter happens to be, they have one of the best conceptualized running schemes in the NFL, to the point that almost every running back that does play in that scheme ends up succeeding in a real life aspect, and then that translates to fantasy football. That's why Seahawks running backs have been so viable, whether it was Rolls Royce or fucking Chris Carson or Penny for Your Thoughts, or all these random running backs that have kind of popped up for the Seahawks over the last few years. And this year it's been split between Ken Walker and Charbonnet. Charbonnet hasn't really had like a breakout game or anything, but Ken Walker kind of starting to pick up the wear and tear. Charbonnet's got the fresh legs. He's coming back from the injury, so he hasn't played as much. So again, just keep an eye on. Normally, I'm not like the snap percentage guy, but this is one of those times where I would be just keeping an eye on the opportunities if this turns into a true 50-50 split. And even if it flips the other way where Charbonnet's starting to get 60, it's like a 60-40 split, but the 60 is on Charbonnet's side, he's going to be worth starting. I'm not starting him this week, assuming Ken Walker plays and is available in like a full capacity. If it's like a full-on like game time decision, like we're going to see in warmups and he's actually like fully questionable as Ken Walker, that's one thing. I'm pretty sure that's not what's going on. I think he's just normal wear and tear, a little bit banged up on the injury report, not that big of a deal. Gonna be starting, gonna be playing. So for as long as that happens, Charbonnet is not viable necessarily for your lineup, but he's a stash because, you know, players who are already dealing with a certain amount of wear and tear potentially are more susceptible to larger injuries down the road. So getting all the way back to it for this game, I'm starting Geno Smith. I'm starting DK Metcalf. It really hasn't been that good this year. It's funny because I feel like people thought JSN was going to relegate Tyler Lockett, but it feels like it's been DK Metcalf who's been suffering. However, you know, he also was dealing with injuries, so that could definitely be part of it. I would throw him in, even though the Ravens are like a really tough defense. It just feels like this could turn into potentially a barn burner. Now, at the same time, this could turn into a slaughter the way we saw with Detroit. So maybe temper expectations. But I also I like Tyler Lockett, assuming, again, he is active and healthy. And I really like JSN in this matchup too, just because the type of wide receivers, generally speaking, that do well against the Ravens are those type of like athletic slot receivers. And even though Tyler Lockett's capable and does play outside as well, you know, he is also, you know, more of that prototypical slot type, body type wide receiver, more the smaller, quick route runner kind of guy. So yeah, I like Tyler Lockett and JSN. And I just, not that I would play him, but just shout out to Jake Bobo, who keeps stealing touchdowns. And it's just fun to say, Bobo. The Cardinals and Browns. Oh, yeah, the Browns. Like, what is going on with Voldemort? Deshaun Watson is just like, I'm good, guys. Not this week. It's going to be PJ Walker or Dorian Thompson Robinson again. Whoever it is a downgrade to the passing options. Now, with PJ Walker, Amari Cooper, and David Njoku have still been kind of viable. If it ends up being DTR, I'm kind of just off of the Browns. Now, Jerome Ford seems like he's back. I would play him, and I would play Kareem Hunt. The running backs, I'm totally fine playing both of them. This feels like a game where they're going to lean on defense and running backs. They're probably not going to need the quarterback and wide receivers in passing game all that much, to be honest. The Cardinals were kind of a plucky team, you know, a lot more surprising than I thought, and I have to give them credit. But trading away Josh Dobbs for Clayton Tune, who one of my earliest videos that I made is Clayton Tune in training camp hitting his wide receiver in the back of the noodle. Like, I don't think that in 8 weeks of football practicing that Clayton Tune is suddenly going to be ready to take on Myles Garrett and the Cleveland Brown defense. So maybe this turns into like the most surprising matchup of the year, but I see this as potentially being a slaughter. And I think most analysts and football heads will see it the same way. Sometimes, you know, there's crazy outliers. And I kind of predicted last week that the Cardinals, not that they were going to win the game, but that it would just, you know, put in a plucky performance against the Ravens. I don't see it this week. I think the massacre is on. Clayton Tune going on the road too. Like, it's a road game in Cleveland. Like, what the actual? Obviously, they're tanking. Like, it's so obvious that it's like painful at this point. So on the Cardinal side, like, downgrade Hollywood, Trey McBride. I'm trying not to play them. If I absolutely have to, I guess. But I'm not trying to play them. I'm not trying to play DeMarcado or Keontae Ingram. I'm fading all Cardinals. Like, maybe I'm wrong. The odds that I'm wrong, though, pretty steep. And like, what kind of ceiling is there even? So it's just, again, Cardinals I'm just out on. And then on the Brown side, like I had mentioned, it's the running backs. Packers, Rams. This one's disappointing. I really thought that the Packers would just be a much better team this year, a much better offense. Now, granted, I did have my concerns. Obviously, all of the wide receivers and tight ends are either sophomore players or rookies. So it's a very young team. The offensive line was patchwork even at the beginning of the year. And, besides A.J. Dillon in his third year and Aaron Jones, who's your only real veteran on the team, this was like an incredibly young and inexperienced offense, and I expected them to have growing pains. Now, it's definitely, I feel like they were surpassing expectations early, and now they are definitely, not meeting expectations. I still think that Jordan Love deserves probably a year or two more in the NFL, and given like an actual roster of like offensive weapons and like some, protection. I mean, we lamented how Aaron Rodgers didn't really have much to work with the last couple of years in Green Bay, and now Jordan Love's supposed to come in what is essentially his rookie season after redshirting behind Rodgers, and just become a GOAT. Like, no, honestly, I feel like he has, again, made bad decisions. He's had struggles. Obviously, he's not in the same elite tier as Aaron Rodgers. I'm not trying to say that he will ever be that. But I had him pegged as a Magic Man Don Mikowski or like a Lynn Dickey type. Again, one of these Green Bay starters that was above average to good, but was not necessarily like an elite Hall of Fame Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers. They have had other good quarterbacks in the past. So, no, I don't think this is like a wrap on Jordan Love's career. It's just, the NFL, I get it. It's a what have you done for me lately business. But it does feel like the whole Twitter ecosphere and social media sphere is just so much more reactionary, whereas the NFL is a lot more slow moving than fans would like. So in terms of fantasy, given that the Packers are at home and the Rams situation is in flux, I actually liked this better when it was if it was gonna be Stafford who is able to push up the score and maybe force the Packers to do the same. But if this ends up being whatever, Dress and Win or whatever the fuck his name is, apologies. I'm sure he is an excellent human being and a 1% athlete. The fact that he's able to make it into the NFL and get signed to a roster at all is incredible, and congratulations. I don't see you going in and winning a game and supporting Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. So unbelievably, I feel like you almost can't play Cooper Kupp or Puka. I think I would go with, if I'm going to pick between, like I'm going to go with Cooper Kupp and just hope for the best and very much temper expectations. But it feels like the ceiling is just like they're gonna, whatever quarterback that's not Stafford is literally gonna throw like 15 passes and 10 of them are gonna go to Cooper Kupp. The one play that I like in this game is Darrell Henderson, because it just feels like they're going to be forced to lean on the running back, and they don't seem to like their other running backs. So, but Royce Freeman's been kind of viable, so I actually think you could flex Royce Freeman again if you're like in a really desperate situation. But I'm kind of limiting this to Darrell Henderson, Royce Freeman on the Rams side of the ball, and then on the Packers side, like you gotta wait and see at this point. Like it's just not there right now, and you might miss a game or even two on the bench. But at this point, this team needs to show me a sign of life before I can really trust putting them in my lineup. The only way Christian Watson, for example, is seeing my lineup is if I literally do not have another option. Romeo Dobbs, I'm kind of fine with because it's the PPR play. And then if Aaron Jones is available and is like trending a little bit more to the healthy side, I would still play him. But it's been bad, and he's splitting it with A.J. Dillon, who is hurting his own fantasy value and that of Aaron Jones. So, like, these are just slates of bad games, and unfortunately, because of injuries and, you know, expectations not being met, this game is just one of them. Buccaneers, Texans. So 2, 3, and 4 teams here. The Texans, you know, kind of surprised me last week, putting up a dud against Carolina. I thought that was going to be more of a high-scoring matchup, so it does make me a little hesitant, but with everything going on this week, feels like you got to stay in the flames with CJ Stroud. Nico Collins, you just put him out there. He is the one. He'll have explosive weeks. He'll have less explosive weeks. It is what it is with that team, and just wide receivers in general, kind of, but specifically him and that team. You just throw him out because you don't want to miss the game when he does blow up, because it's like potentially like a week winner. So I'm playing CJ Stroud here. I'm playing Nico Collins, and I'm even playing Damian Pierce, but it's rough. It is bad. Like, honestly, he lost a touchdown to the fullback last week and then didn't really get a lot more done after that. I would also just stash Devin Singletary. I don't know. I mean, if you have better options, don't play Damian Pierce, like, obviously. But if you're just really stuck and you don't have a choice, like, here's a perfect. I would play both Patriots running backs in the next matchup over Damian Pierce. But I do understand, like I said, with everything going on, if you just don't have the other option, and he was highly dropped and he was one of your guys, you might just be forced to throw him in and just hope for the best. And on the Buck side, it's usual suspects again. Baker Mayfield is in. I'm putting in Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Rashad White. He gets all the volume. It's gross, but it is what it is. And then if you're really desperate for a tight end play, if you're just hurting and you need a tight end, Cade Otton, he's going to get you 4 for 40 consistently. So if you just need 8 points so it doesn't tank your tight end spot, Cade Otton is kind of like a sneaky underlying option, kind of a just sneaky safe floor with no real upside. Commanders, Patriots. This is where I was saying I would just play both Patriots running backs, honestly. I'm not even sure which one it's going to be. I'm kind of shocked by Ramondre Stevenson's inefficiencies this year and his lack of production in this offense. Not just because of him as a running back, but to me, he's the best receiver on this team. And now that they've lost Kendrick Bourne, maybe they start utilizing him more in that arena. But I do feel like that's really what's been missing from Ramondre's game. If Ramondre was getting 6 to 8 receptions a week, nobody would give a shit what he was doing in terms of the run game. He could get 10 for 20 every week. Nobody would care. The receptions are so valuable for fantasy football. That's really where I thought his value was going to come from. And unfortunately, it just kind of hasn't. But again, given that they've lost Kendrick Bourne, and they're not going to rely on Juju Smith-Schuster and Demario Douglas, who I would be fine stashing those players, but I'm not. I mean, it's a good matchup. You might be able to throw them out and hope, but it's gross. But I like the running backs here. And I like Mac Jones as kind of like the sum of all parts. It's funny how Mac Jones has kind of survived as the starter, but he gets a good matchup against the Commanders here. So I would play Mac Jones. Sam Howell, even though it's a road matchup against the Patriots, I would still play him. McLaurin, he's in. Jahan Dotson. Finally, the Jahan Dotson breakout for the truthers out there. And it's like if you drafted Jahan Dotson and held him for 7 weeks, and then, you know, watched him go off in week 8, this is exactly what it feels like.
Go fuck yourself.
So yeah, but given that he's had the breakout, and again, given that the Patriots normally try to shut down the number 1 wide receiver, which is Terry McLaurin, so if you do play him, just temper expectations. I would play Jahan Dotson. Brian Robinson is like the starting running back, kind of gross, inefficient volume. Throw him in. Antonio Gibson is still mixing in, but just really isn't being used enough or in any capacity to make him fantasy viable. And Logan Thomas. I like Logan Thomas as a tight end play. Just again, given the state of tight ends, if he's still out there on waivers, I would prioritize him over Trey McBride, who's like the tight end hotness this week because of the quarterback situation. Just going back to the Patriots quickly, like I mentioned, the running backs are in. I'm trying not to play Juju or Demario Douglas, but I prefer Demario over Juju. But if I really have to, if I have any like kind of viable options, I'm pivoting away from that. And then tight end here. This might be a week where you can throw in Hunter Henry. But again, you have to be really hurting at tight end spot. And I would even have Hunter Henry under Trey McBride, who I have less faith in, obviously, with Clayton Tune under center. Moving into the last of the early afternoon games, the Bears Saints 2-6 at 4-4. So with the Bears, I mean, we saw Tyson Badgett come back down to earth. It really affected DJ Moore, and obviously, like even more than I had anticipated, or maybe others had anticipated. So DJ Moore, unfortunately, not a viable play, especially if he's going to be seeing Marshawn Lattimore, and it's a home matchup against the Saints. Everything is screaming, do not start DJ Moore. Common sense, logic, the matchup, the quarterback, literally every possible conceivable process that you want to go by in fantasy football tells you not to start DJ Moore. Honestly, this could end up being the monster Badgett DJ Moore week just to fuck with us from a fantasy perspective. So again, if you're like trying to get cute to the point of DJ Moore or Demario Douglas, I'm still going to go with DJ Moore, even though it's a bad, again, everything I just said tells you not to play DJ Moore. If you're asking me DJ Moore or DJ Chark, sorry, Charknado, I'm still going with DJ Moore. So, again, if you have like a viable option, even a Terry McLaurin in a bad matchup, okay, fine. But yeah, I'm not. So, I mean, at least Tyson Badgett, too, is kind of like a known factor. So, DJ Moore versus Puka Nacua, who's been terrific all season, but we don't know who the quarterback's going to be. Or even if it ends up being, I keep calling him Dresser Win. That's going to be his name on this show from now on. Dresser Win, Fran Dresser Win, again, apologies to you as a real life human being, but as a fantasy quarterback, not viable in my opinion. So, again, I would probably go with DJ Moore over Puka. I think Cooper Kupp. I still go with Cooper Kupp, but DJ Moore. I mean, again, given the situation, the matchup's better for the Rams, but you can start Deontay Foreman. It sucks. I said last week that it very much could just peter out, disappear, and he could have a dud week. He's done it in the past, and it's exactly what happened. And it feels like everybody's going to go away from it, and he's going to get 20 to 25 carries. They're going to be gross. He might not top 100 yards. Maybe he falls in the end zone. But it just feels like right now that backfield is all his. So the only fantasy asset that I'm trying to get in my lineup is Deonta Foreman. Again, state of the running backs. DJ Moore, again, if I just don't have a viable option, and that's it. End of list. Not messing around with anyone else here. Cole Kmet, actually, sorry. absolute PPR monster last week, even in the rough matchup and loss. And I had mentioned that potentially, with the quarterback Badgett, just the way he plays, that could be a thing. So Cole Kmet actually is the other viable fantasy asset for the Bears. And then on the Saints side, Derek Carr, Chris Olave, you're hoping for the bounce back. Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, superstar, Super Camario. He's in every week. And Rashid Shaheed. It's a good matchup. Feels like they'll take a couple deep shots, so I would not mind flexing him. Getting into the afternoon games, the 4:00 games. Colts, Panthers, 3-5 at 1-6. Colts side, you can play both running backs still. It feels like Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss are still viable. Panthers have not been as good against the run this year as they were last year. So I think you can play both running backs. Michael Pittman, you can play Josh Downs. Even last week, again, showing off the PPR skills. I'm putting him in my lineups at this point. So last week, I made the decision of sticking with DJ Moore over Josh Downs. Even though I still would have lost my matchup for that specific decision, it ended up it would have been the right decision to play Josh Downs. That's how good he's been for the team. Gardner Minshew Mania is a viable streaming quarterback. So if you have him, you can play him, even though the Panthers, again, last week kind of turned into like a weird low scoring thing. I don't feel like that's always going to be a week-to-week thing unless they've just really found their defense. But the Colts have been getting into shootouts just every week, it feels like. So I like Minshew here. I like both running backs. I like Michael Pittman, and I like Josh Downs. On the Panthers side, it's Adam Thielen and Chuba Hubbard, I guess. I'm done with Miles Sanders. Like, I really liked Miles Sanders and the idea of Miles Sanders in Carolina, but just was one of those players that kind of got away from me, and I really did not draft him in very many places. In fact, across all of my leagues, I think I only have one share of Miles Sanders this year. But until I see him actually produce, if I'm a fantasy manager, you have to leave him on the bench at this point. Chuba Hubbard in super deep leagues if you're desperate, but this team runs through Adam Thielen and no one else. Bryce Young isn't even really a viable fantasy quarterback for the most part. Again, he is above the level of the Aiden O'Connell, the Tyson Bagent, the Dresser Wynn kid that might play for the Rams. All of these randos, he's above that level. But he's, to me, under Sam Howell, under Derek Carr, under Mac Jones as a fantasy asset, not as a real-life quarterback and his future potential, but a fantasy asset for the year of 2023 right now. Yeah, I see him under all those guys. So Adam Thielen, end of list, honestly. Giants 2-6 at Raiders 3-5. Raiders fire head coach Josh McDaniels. They fire the offensive coordinator. Now it's Damian Pierce, former linebacker for the New York. No, not Damian Pierce. Sorry, Antonio Pierce, former linebacker for the New York Giants, taking over as interim head coach. I believe that means that this team is going to run the shit out of Josh Jacobs again. So salute to Josh Jacobs managers. You made it through the dark times, and I think it will pay off in the back half of this season. And with Aiden O'Connell, I still like Devontae Adams, but unfortunately, Jacoby Myers is the one that could take a hit here. So, kind of want to see the proof in the pudding, but for me, I'm starting Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs and nobody else until I see it. I need to see Aiden McConnell basically utilize Devontae and Jacoby. If it ends up being one of those situations where it's going to flip-flop, I'm kind of out on Jacoby. And so this might be also the time to maybe go try and trade Jacoby Myers and see what you can get for him. On the Giants side of the ball, That's it. There is no Giants side of the ball. No, I'm lying. It's Saquon Barkley and end of list. Like, I don't care who the quarterback is. Darren Waller's likely to miss a few weeks now. The wide receivers are just an absolute island of misfit toys. There's no way I'm messing around with any Giants not named Saquon Barkley. So easy analysis here. Saquon Barkley, if you have him, you play him. And if you don't, then you don't touch any Giants. Easy peasy. Cowboys, Eagles, probably one of the games of the week here. Actually, both games of the week are coming up here, and this is my game of the week. I think a lot of people are going to be wanting to watch this matchup. There is going to be all kinds of trash talk on the Twitters. I'm excited for this one just from an actual football, real-life perspective. Cowboys at Eagles. Cowboys 5-2, Eagles 7-1. So the Cowboys could be knocking the Eagles down to 2 wins, which would essentially, I know the Eagles have the extra game up right now. But yeah, 7-2 if the Cowboys win 6-2. So it would be basically right there. So yeah, I really am all steam and go for this one. It's for your Cowboys, even Brandon Cooks is in. So it's CeeDee Lamb is in. Obviously, Brandon Cooks is in. Even though it hasn't been great, Tony Pollard's in and Dak is in. And Jake Ferguson is a viable streaming tight end. You can play him too. So I like all of those plays. And then on the Eagles side, obviously, like A.J. Brown smash, DeAndre Swift is in, Devonta Smith is in, Jalen Hurts is in, Dallas Goedert is in, and you're good. Cool. Awesome analysis. Enjoy that game. That's probably where there's going to be a lot of fantasy points. Also, just shout out, for the best ball stuff. I feel like I've been hitting that game a lot. The Cowboys-Eagles game and the next one, the Sunday nighter. Bills at Bengals. Bills are 5-3, Bengals 4-3. Both of these teams kind of were on the ropes early, have been scraping out wins, fighting for their seasons. This could definitely turn into a shootout. It is in Cincinnati. So I like Burrow here. I like Jamar Chase. And I like Joe Mixon even. Joe Mixon had a good game against the 49ers, and I think they're going to start to lean on him a little bit more. And T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, you take your pot shots when you can. I feel like this is the type of matchup, again, that could potentially be more high scoring, and so I'm willing to put in those auxiliary wide receivers. And on the Bills side of it, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, the Leonard Fournette signing, I feel like definitely puts a little bit of a monkey wrench into the value of James Cook. I mean, he was already losing out on goal line touches, which I feel like is stupid. But it is what it is. He's the new Devin Singletary, unfortunately, where he is going to end up with like 1,000 yards all purpose, but he's only going to have like 6 to 7 touchdowns and just going to be very frustrating from a fantasy perspective because you're going to want to play him week in and week out, and he's just always going to slightly disappoint. It just feels like his ceiling right now is capped at 10 points a game, and it just kind of sucks because he's so talented. He should be smashing. But again, just unless you have a real better option, James Cook is probably still cracking your lineup, and you're just hoping that, he's able to run one in from outside the 20s. And then, it's Josh Allen, it's Gabe Davis, it's Stephon Diggs, and then the rookie Dalton Kincaid finally has started to emerge. Sam Laporta has ascended to being the dynasty tight end one. I still think it's Mark Andrews personally, but I get it. Sam Laporta has a connection with Jared Goff. He's on a team. He's super young. He was just drafted. I get all the arguments. Totally understand. Dalton Kincaid, potentially, if he continues the breakout season for the rest of the year, is going to be a conversation of, is it Laporta or is it Kincaid? Just like it was, before the season started. Now, I was more on the Laporta side. I definitely have tons of him in a lot of my leagues where I took veteran tight ends or And a lot of best balls where I wanted to take like Mark Andrews, and then just to kind of like hedge my bet in the later rounds and those early parts of the season. I was taking a lot of Sam Laporta. So I do have a lot of Laporta shares. But again, Kincaid, he was the more highly touted guy. He was like the guy. So he could potentially emerge down the stretch of the season here. And he is definitely a viable play here. So again, just to recap, I mean, you play everyone you can that you can get your hands on for this game. That's viable. I'm not trying to play Lenny Fournette, who just got there, or Latavius Murray even, because you just with Lat Murray, you're just praying that they get like onto the goal line, and it's not Josh Allen that runs it in. And we will wrap this up with the Monday nighter, Chargers at Jets. Oh, good golly. The Jets 4-3. Aaron Rodgers magically working out on the sidelines apparently is ready to come back from an ACL tear in the same fucking season that he tore it. Science is weird.
Never give up. Never surrender.
So, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, end of list for the Jets. And for the Chargers, it's usual suspects is Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, and Keenan Allen. And until I actually see it, I'm not the one that's messing around with Quentin Johnston or Josh Palmer or any of these other guys right now. The offense feels like it's basically going to be focused on Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler, which is good for fantasy. Maybe not necessarily good overall for Justin Herbert, but it's like you're starting him anyways. But it is a tough defensive matchup, so maybe just temper expectations. But that's it. That's it for me on all of the games. We will be back on Sunday morning, sticking with the 8:30 start time, so we'll be in there before the 9:30 a.m. game. Really, I'm probably just going to stick with that time schedule for the rest of the year because it kind of just fits my own personal schedule. So yeah, make sure that if you've made it this far into the show, hey, first, I hella appreciate you. Second, please go superkick that bell. Make sure you subscribe so that you can get notified for all of the shows, whether it's Thursday Thriller, whether it's Monday Mayhem, the Wildcard Wednesdays where I get to interview other content creators. Those are also officially available on Spotify. So if you want to listen to it in podcast form, you can go over to Spotify, drop us a like and a review, and check out the Wildcard Wednesdays. Those are absolutely my favorite shows that I get to do. But otherwise, thank you again for listening. I'll see you guys all on Sunday and catch you on the flip side.
He's running down the middle by the 50. He's at the 30. He's bare-chested and banging his chest. Now he runs the opposite way. He runs at the 50. He runs at the 40. The guy is drunk, but there he goes. The 20. They're chasing him. They're not going to get him. Waving his arms, bare-chested. Somebody stop that man. Here comes